Good morning, America, and welcome to this morning's huddle brought to you by Going on Offense. My name is Darrell Moon, and I'll be your host today. Thank you for being with us, and we hope that you will join the conversation. We have a wonderful guest panelist today that will talk about getting our organizations back up and running. We hope you will participate and share your ideas and suggestions with us today. We're holding these huddles every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in an effort to both be a support to those who are struggling, to inject hope and optimism where there may be doubt and despair. I do want to remind the listeners that this is not a forum to vent, criticize, or complain. Let's keep the huddles proactive in a positive direction. There are four primary purposes of these huddles: to support those struggling, to brainstorm strategies to help, to promote resources, and to engage collaboration. Now, to introduce today's guest. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Dr. Burl Randolph Jr. He's a doctor of management and organizational leaders. He's a retired colonel of the U.S. Army and served his country for nearly 32 years. He is the president of My Wingman and is a best-selling author and leader coach. I'm going to invite Burl to take 4 or 5 minutes to introduce himself and share a comment or two about this topic today. But before I do, I want to invite all of you to participate in today's conversation. If you're willing to share your thoughts, ideas, suggestions, and even questions, just raise your hand on the control box at any time during the huddle, and I will turn on your audio and we will be able to hear you and you can participate in the conversation. Burl, would you like to take a few minutes and introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Darrell. Good morning, Go On Offense audience. Thank you, Darrell, for inviting me to share your platform. As Darrell's mentioned, I'm Dr. Burl Randolph Jr. I'm the president and chief consultant of My Wingman LLC. At My Wingman, we help leaders design legacies that last through leader coaching, organizational planning, corporate training, legacy expression, and government contract. And all our lines of business are integrated to help our primary line of business, which is leader coaching. Leader coaching consists of emerging leaders who fancy themselves a leader one day or have been designated by their organization to be a leader sometime in the future, all the way through CEOs, presidents, and business owners. Part of that, a great deal of that, what I do with my coaching practice is organizational planning, strategic, or operational, and tactical. Corporate training consists of if a organization provides me with a training package they would like me to present or I tailor a training package for the organization based on the topic they provide me, then I present and also facilitate that. My legacy expression is my writing, editing, publishing, and promoting services, and we'll talk a little bit about that at the end of the presentation, and of course, government contracting, local, state, and at the federal level. So that's what we do. We've continued to do that while, since the pandemic has occurred, in our conversations today, I will not tell you anything that I have not had to do myself because, as you can probably imagine, everything I do is people-oriented and very interactive. And since we are no longer physically with people, the interaction is much like we're doing this morning on this webinar. Thank you so much, Darrell.
Wonderful. So in order to get things started today, I'm going to launch a couple of polls and get some feedback from the audience. And again, would encourage those that are participating to raise your hand and we'll turn your mic on and you can join the conversation. The first question I'd like to ask is, to what degree will your organization need to ramp back up? So let me launch that right now. Take a few minutes and give me your input as to whether or not at all things pretty well haven't changed, slightly, significantly, entirely. Let's find out where the audience is coming from. So it looks like most everyone's had a chance to give their input. If you haven't, share that now, and I will close the poll and share it. And as you can see, 22% said significantly, and 78% said slightly. So nobody said entirely, and nobody said not at all. So it looks like slightly is kind of where the group is today. I'm going to hide that and share another poll, or launch another poll, which is, what do you expect will be some of the challenges that you will face? And if you don't see you can choose more than one, but if you don't see your answer there, feel free to share what you expect some of your challenges to be through sending in a question, and I'll read that to the group as a whole. So we're starting to get some input. It looks like it's kind of across the board. Looks like people are still giving inputs, so we'll keep it open. Looks like the top answer right now is hesitancy of being back in the public again. And then also creating confidence with clients that they can come back. So it looks like we've gotten responses across the board. Doesn't look like anybody's adding anything. So let's go ahead and close that, and I will share it. 30% said emotions will be high. 70% said hesitancy of being back in the public and in a public place again. Supporting employees working in a high-risk environment is 30%, and 50% said creating confidence to bring back the clients, and then 10% said other. So I'm going to hide that. I'm going to look just real quickly to see if anybody's raised their hand so we can include them in the conversation. Not seeing anybody. Let's just start, Burl, with what have you learned from your experience in the Army, as well as a leader coach, in addressing high-risk situations? You've obviously been in the Army, you've been deployed across the world many different times. Give us some of your thoughts about this topic.
Well, Darrell, the first thing I had to do was, and I'd say I did learn this in the Army. I didn't, but I actually learned it several years ago when I started my doctoral studies, and we were told, accept that you don't know everything about this situation. Accept that you don't know everything about this situation. And you'll find that's the difference in a doctoral program between those that make it through, those that drop out, and those that graduate. And so I've noticed from my time training, coaching, mentoring that as adult learners, we're experiential learners. And so we'll throw out an idea, a concept, or a situation, and immediately as adult learners, we start entering the recesses of our mind to think, hey, how can I take what he's saying and relate it to an experience I've already have? That's just natural. I did the same thing. And so when we hear things like COVID is like the flu or COVID is like combat, that gives us a reference point. Well, when I tried that, the problem with that is COVID is not like the flu. And I've been in combat 3 times and it's not like combat. And so I thought, how can this help me settle down? And I thought back to accepting what I don't know about the situation. As Darrell has mentioned, I'm a doctor of management and organizational leadership, not an epidemiologist. So I don't know enough about the situation to make, solid decisions. And so when I accepted what I don't know, 3 things occurred. First of all, it reduces your bias because now you're not trying to find answers that you can't find because you don't have the expertise or you don't have the experience. And once your mind stops rolling around like that, it reduces your stress, it reduces your anxiety, and it reduces your confusion. When you go into combat, there's a little bit of hesitation, but I will tell you, that's what I was trained for. That's what I dedicated my life for. I knew those things. So there wasn't as much hesitancy or as much bias. The second thing is it reduces unnecessary risk. So I'm sure we've all heard the term the new normal. Well, there's nothing normal about being sick. It happens, but there's nothing normal about being sick. There's nothing normal about combat because normal becomes routine. Routine becomes acceptance. Acceptance can become complacency. Oh, I don't need to wear a mask. I don't need to social distance. Hey, I can start shaking hands, hugging people. I don't need to sanitize. All of those are unnecessary risk. And again, once you accept that you don't know everything about the situation, you reduce those unnecessary risks. And the third thing would be you learn to manage expectations. And really the only example, or the best example I can give is that combat is not completed in 30 days. I've been to combat 3 times and I didn't just go and come back 30 days later. And so if you're managing the expectation that this will be longer than 30, 60, 90 days, 180 days, so forth and so on, you can then begin to develop a plan. And that's what I do with my coaching clients. Okay, we know where we're at right now. How do we envision things in the next 60 days, the next 90 days? And we actually go now month by month, when before you plan quarter by quarter. Well, this thing is moving too fast, and we're in a VUCA environment, volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous. And so you can really only plan out 30 days and in some cases 2 weeks because things change so dramatically.
So what are some suggestions for, as you mentioned, managing those expectations? How would a leader of an organization, what are some ideas or suggestions on how they would keep that communication open with their staff to be able to manage those expectations?
Well, one of those is, of course, following the expert guidance. You know, we have a national strategy of containing the virus. Great. We've operationalized that through social distancing. And now our tactics are remote working, sanitization, limited exposure. Um, of course, I'll say there are a lot of CEOs and business owners that are my age. And so they may not be digitally savvy. And I tell them, if you're not digitally savvy, you need to get digitally savvy. What we're doing right now, I have no idea how long we will be doing this. 5 years ago, I don't think we as a nation would have been able to do what we're doing right now. But because our infrastructure and IT is so advanced, we can do this. I put out a blog, which is another way you can stay connected with your organization and with your clients. But you need to determine what platform you're going to be on to communicate with your organization, whether it's Zoom, GoToWebinar, Facebook Live, um, Google Hangouts, Google Duos. You need to be able to communicate with your organization. If you don't want to do that, okay, as I was growing up as a CEO, we didn't have all this. So we had conference calls. And I'm sure many of you remember that. Just the good old fashioned daily or weekly conference calls to talk about what's going on, to give people the opportunity to express what's going on with their work life or what's going on with their personal life. And to be able to do those things to keep the lines of communications open. The lines of communications are very important. And so experts with the COVID, before your organization, you may be the expert, or you may have designated to be the expert. Gather information, give updates, know what's going on locally and state to state. Darrell, I will tell you in the blink of an eye, everything I was doing to promote my new book stopped because the governor decided I would like people to sort of stay at home while this is going on. A week later, the bookstore that I sat at giving a Meet the Author presentation, she closed all the bookstores. So that closed. A week later, the governor of our adjoining state, Illinois, shelter in place order. All of those locations closed. And so you have to be you have to really know what's going on. Am I saying sit by the television and watch CNN 24/7? No, because we all have other things to do. But we need to keep up as leaders. We need to keep up with what's going on with the situation so that we can tell those that we lead, this may occur next. This may be a time when we can get back to work, or maybe these are some things that you can help me think of to help you do. Another good idea, and people probably won't like it, we all have a list of things that, hey, if I just had enough time to do them. Well, guess what? There was a webinar a couple of weeks ago that talked about all this extra time we have. Now we have plenty of time to do those things. If you have employees and you have administrative things that you have always needed to have done, and you want to find a way to keep them employed, why can't they do those things remotely? Oddly enough, since I'm not doing book signings and meet the author events, I have plenty of time to do all my admin now. and I have I'm very satisfied with how organized I have now become. But there are a number of things you can do as an employer, as a small business, to quote unquote take advantage of working remotely and trying to get things back up and running.
Nice. So we've got a couple questions that just came in for you.
Okay.
Let me post those. How frequent should communications happen with employees? And do communications need to be more frequent as the return to work expand approaches? From
Okay.
your opinion.
So yeah. And so I'll give kind of a small example. If you remember back in 2013 when the government shut down, and we
Mhm.
went, we went on sequestration. And so one of the things we were required to do was develop a plan to reach out to our employees to let them know when it had ended and when they could come back to work. In this particular environment, you're not under any such restriction. And so I wouldn't say reach out to your employees every day because that's probably not feasible. If they're actually still working, then maintain the schedule that you've always maintained. If you have a weekly meeting or a bi-weekly meeting, then you continue to have those meetings. If they are not working, it would be helpful to email, text, or call at least weekly just to see how they're doing. Because again, they're not working. They don't know what's occurring. They don't know when they'll be coming back. And so it is good just to check on them. I have something that I started called the check-in challenge. And when I was a CEO, when I had uh, employees, for lack of a better term, that had issues during a particular week, they were hospitalized, they had a death in the family, something like that, I would take Sunday evening and I will call each of them to check on them. And we would have conversations, and then I would find out what they needed, where they were at, and how I could help them. We're kind of in similar situations now. Just because people
Mhm.
work for you doesn't mean you know what their personal life is like. Even if you talk to each individual once a week, see how they're doing, see what they're struggling with, see how things are going, that's okay. If you decide to do a check in challenge via email, Darrell, I'll tell you, when I used to do this on active duty, people probably responded because I was their boss. I mean, there was no other reason. When I do it now, normally when I check on people before the pandemic, I'd get a 10% response rate. So, I'd send out 20 emails a day and I may get, two responses. Now I get a 60% response rate because those that aren't working want someone to express things to. Those that are working, they want to express their concerns to someone other than their boss on how to deal with a situation. And so again, at a minimum, and again, some of your organizations are huge. I mean, you're absolutely huge. And so you as the CEO, president, or business owner, you may not be able to touch everyone, but that's why you've designated other leaders. You may have regional managers. You may have uh, your C-level staff who's in charge of a section or 4 or 5. They can do that because again, you can't do that with everyone, but you should at least, as a leader, do it with your span of control. The 5 or 10 people that report directly to you, your direct reports, you should be talking to them at least weekly. Again, if you've got a small company, it doesn't hurt just to reach out. It doesn't hurt to send a text. That's the funny thing. Back in my day, we had to call everyone. We don't have to do that anymore. We can
Right.
text people, we can email people, we can do things of that nature to stay connected.
So Burl, the highest poll answer was hesitancy of being back in the public where, you're at risk. Now
Mhm.
you've had to manage soldiers going into high risk situations. Give us some feedback and some of your experience of how do you prepare and how do you manage the emotions of asking employees to maybe go into a high risk or a somewhat risky situation?
And so, Darrell, I mentioned earlier, follow the expert guidance. And so it's pretty much the same in the military. We have expert guidance when we go into situations where we think there may have been a chemical attack. We suit up. We wear all the protective gear that we need to wear. And me as a leader, I enforce it. We're not debating it. We're not talking about it. You're going to do it because I'm responsible for you. I'm responsible for your safety. And so a friend of mine, as I was talking to her the other day, she's in a high risk category. And so one of the things she did at her house was she set up a sanitation bar. And I said, well, what does that mean? How do you have a sanitation bar at your house? When you open the door, there's a sign, and it gives you detailed instructions of the things you must do before you can pass that sign. Take off your backpack, take off your clothes, put them inside of a trash bag. She has hand sanitizer, Lysol, and paper towels. These are the procedures you need to do before you go past this line in my house. Those same procedures that we're talking about now, we need to use for the people that we want to come back to work. Can we get face masks? Does everyone wear one? Does everyone wear gloves? Uh, the latex gloves. Can you social distance? Do you have enough space in your organization to clear out and have a cubicle between each person? If you don't have cubicles, do you have enough space to do the 6 feet between desks? Do you feel comfortable? And it doesn't matter if you feel comfortable or not, you're going to have to do it. Closing off the snack bar. Any place where people can congregate, you're probably going to have to close those off. For those that smoke, and again, we have to accommodate everyone who works for us. There can't be one smoking pit anymore. You've got to space them out so that people are social distancing, people are not gathering in same locations. If you have a business and you're sending your workers out to other people's homes, I have someone coming here on Friday. So I asked the person in charge, so what are your social distancing measures? What are your contamination measures? What are your sanitization measures? I want you to come around to the back of my house so that you're not coming through my house. You'll come in through the back door. Will you wear booties on your feet? Will you have on a face mask? Do you have on gloves? Should I have on those things? People need to know answers to those questions. And instead of voting on it, we really do need to tell them these will be our procedures from now on so that you can stay safe and we can stay safe when we're going out into the public, when we're interacting with other people. Um, for me, oftentimes I will go to someone's office or I will meet them in a public place for a coaching session. Well, I can't do that anymore. And even if I did, tables aren't 6 feet apart. So how do you really do that? If you can't do those things, if you have the kind of organization where you're giving consultations and updates and things like that, hey, Zoom is a viable way to do that. But again, within the workplace, uh, you need to do the things that the experts say. If you look at the banking industry right now, although banks are open, they're at half staff. About 50% of personnel come in and run a shift from about 8 to 12. Then they bring in the second shift and they run a shift from 12 to closing. That way, everyone works, everyone gets paid, but we can adhere to social distancing. And so there are quite a few number of things that you can do to alleviate some of the stress and the anxiety. Or you can do like I was at a Dollar General the other day and a guy cut in front of me. Well, the guy in front of him turned around and said, one, you cut line. Two, you're in my space. And the guy, he was dead serious. He said, you're in my space. Move. And so we may have to do things like that because there is a certain amount of anxiety when we go out into public. And so we need to enforce those things for ourselves. And we also need to let our employees know that we will back them up and find ways for them to enforce the social distancing measures.
So I like what you said. Basically, if in the Army, there are certain things you ask people to do to be protective, it's not a matter of discussion. It's you're going to do it. And if we're going to create an environment for our employees where they can feel safe, it's not about, well, if the rule is you wear a face mask or if the rule is you stay social distancing, it's not like, well, it's a guideline. Hopefully everybody will follow it. It's about making sure that people follow it so that other employees can feel comfortable coming back to work. I mean, when you go to a grocery store, you'll find half the people wear face masks and the other people don't. And in the public, that's people's choice. But at work, if you're going to create an environment where people can feel safe, you need to kind of adhere to the guidelines or the rules that you've set up. And that
Yes.
creates a certain level of safety for the employees. Now let's talk about how you bring the clients back. How do you bring in your clients, whether you're I know one of these questions came from a dental office. How do you create the confidence amongst the patients to come back in and have their mouth worked on? Or how do you bring clients back into a retail or a restaurant? How do you start to bring that back where the guests can feel confident?
Well, something that I've seen and I think is working quite well when I watch television in the local area here, organizations on their commercials explain to you what they're doing to keep you safe. Car dealerships are very good at it. First of all, by appointment only. Secondly, you'll be greeted at the door by only one person, but they'll, of course, keep their distance. Thirdly, we have designated areas for our appointments now. And so there may only be 4 or 5 people in the entire um, area when you're there. We have face masks for you. We have gloves for you. We have Lysol. We have all the things in place for you so that you know you're in a safe, secure environment. Let's talk about organizations that are already open and what they're doing. Many grocery stores at the cashier table or the cashier line, they put up shields in front of the
Mhm,
cashier. So if
mhm.
there's any sort of fluid passing between you or them or whatever, uh, the shield stops it. The conveyor belt. Please do not put your food on the conveyor belt because we sanitize after each customer. When you explain to people what you're doing and how you're keeping them safe, they will be a little bit more, they won't be as reticent to come back. We talked about a dental office, and that is actually a very good example because you walk into the dental office, you have that high bar, you have the 2 receptionists down there, and you check in. Well, that's not 6 feet, is it? So if you're a dentist, how do you make that to where a person can come in, they can still check in and keep that social distance? I've gone to a couple places where they've already set the chairs of where you can sit and they're 6 feet apart. Or you've probably gone to stores where they'll tell you this is 6 feet between places. Again, dentistry offices have lots of different cubicles. You have the wall separating the cubicles, so that's not as difficult. But in a dentist office, the dental hygienist, mine routinely wears a mask and gloves. So all of those things, they're normally fairly clean. And so it's not so much in the dental hygienist chair, but it's in the waiting room. Waiting rooms in dental offices are not very large. So some of the nice fancy things you have in there right now, maybe your artificial fireplace, your table with magazines, maybe you need to move those out. And again, space chairs out so that when people come in, they know where they can sit at. And if they're coming in as a quote unquote a family, yeah, you have to make adjustments for that. Little kids can't take themselves to the dentist. So you make adjustments for that. But
Right.
I think as long as people see that you're taking things into consideration to keep them safe, you can bring them back. But again, advertise that before you open back up. So if you want to get back up and running, let people know that you're still in the game or that you're going to be in the game, what you're going to do once you come back. If you don't blog now, start. Not everyone has a website, so use whatever social media platform that you're comfortable with, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Alignable, Facebook Live, whatever it is. Use those platforms to let your customers and your clients know how you will protect them. And of course, email. Email still works. Email blast. Hey, these are the things we're doing at My Wingman LLC to keep you safe. Boom, 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 boom. Just let people know, and that reduces the anxiety about coming back into your business.
Nice. So let's talk about the emotions that go into being back at a risky situation. Obviously, in the Army, you're asking men and women to put their lives at risk. There's got to be a lot of
Yes.
emotions associated with that, not only to
Yeah.
go into the event, but also afterwards and just the whole recovery of that. Talk a little bit about how you would apply the principles you've learned in the Army at dealing with emotions to organizations and their employees.
Well, They're going into any sort of high risk or high risk event is tough. I mean, it just is. And so the Army, we pride ourselves on planning, but planning is only part of it. You need to communicate the plan. So before you restart your business, again, think about the things we're talking about right now. How will I let people know I'm open? How will I let my employees know that this is the way we will do business now? How will I let my clients know this is the way we will do business now? Have a conference call, have a Zoom meeting, and once you figure all those things out, or you think you're figuring out, present those things. Invariably, and this has always worked for me, officers in the Army come up with the plan. They then present the plan to the non-commissioned officers, who then give input to the plan. They give it back to the officers. We then edit the plan, then we execute. That sort of communication needs to happen in your organization. You're the leader and you make up the plan, and that's great. But I will tell you that we're all so different. We're all so creative. People will come up with ideas and they will ask questions. Hey, what about this? What about that? Can we add this? Can we do that? La, 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 la. And the next thing you know, you went from having a good plan that you created to having a great plan that your organization created. That's the first thing you just did for your organization. As a team, you created your uh, return to work plan. You communicate that to them. Again, we don't know when businesses will be back open. And so the sooner we create it and communicate it, the better off we are. And again, once a week when you're talking to people or communicating with people, you may be adding to the plan. And so all the way up to what we call LD, leaving entering the battle, we're constantly communicating, we're constantly updating the plan so that everyone knows what they're supposed to do when we execute. And once we execute, we do the things we're supposed to do. When everyone comes back, and Darrell, you mentioned a great question. Just like a football team, what do football teams do after the game on Sunday? They review tape. In the Army, we call it A or after action review. So when someone goes out on a call, when they come back, get their feedback. So when you went to Dr. Randolph's house, what are things you encountered that we didn't anticipate? What are things you had to do that you didn't expect? What are things that we can do better or we can add to our playbook so that all our drivers, all our technicians, all our personnel can do those same things when they go out? So you're constantly updating your procedures, your tactics, your techniques, and your procedures. So by the time that this is over with, you've created a brand new SOP on how to execute operations in a high risk environment. Does that answer your question?
Very nice, thank you. So I'm going to again invite those that are attending to raise their hand to join us to ask questions or send questions through to find out what they're looking for. But I'd like to move this into culture.
Okay.
There's no question that a company culture and organization's culture has a lot to do with the stress, the emotions, pulling together. Yes. I would think that now more than ever, building a culture of positivity, of safety, of confidence, of working together is critical. Yes. I would love to get the input from the attendees, so please raise your hand and share your thoughts. But Burl, give us some thoughts about how in the Army you create within your platoon or group or squad, whatever, how do you create culture? What are some things you've learned at building culture?
Well, I think one of the things, Darrell, is you have to, the old saying, you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. So if you're not the person that is a big communicator and people know that you will reach out and that you care and concern about them, it may be a little difficult to suddenly start that now. But you may have to, because your business is just as much on the line as their employment is.
Yep.
And so communications has always been a big thing. When I was a CEO, I would have a couple of meetings a day. First thing in the morning, I would have a meeting with my regional managers to figure out what was going on for the day, where we had to orient and things of that nature. Because again, fast moving, fast paced organization. At the end of the day, I would meet individually with regional managers. Well, when I became comfortable with the things they were telling me, I decided they didn't have to meet with me anymore. One of them explained to me, "Sir, it's not about you. It's about us." What? It's not about you. It's about us. You may not have anything to say to me, but I need my time with the boss. I need your mentorship. I need your guidance. I need to be able to ask you questions that I can't ask any other time because I'm in a group. And I was like, oh, okay. And so those interpersonal relationships at the senior level become very, very important because, again, you're grooming people in your organization to move forward. And if you don't do anything else, everyone needs to know that you're there to help them be successful. You're the CEO, you're the president, you're the boss, you're whatever you are. So you've already achieved a great deal of notoriety where you're at, but maybe they're still coming up through the ranks. Maybe they want to move forward. Maybe they want to do better. Maybe they want to go back to, you never know until you sit down and you really ask people what are their goals? What do they plan on doing? And right now, we've got plenty of time to have conversations with people. We've got plenty of time like that. But that's how you build cohesive teams, listening to people. So I'm not going to say anything. Give me your feedback. The first time I did that, my regional managers were like, "What? I already know what I know, but I don't know what you know. So give me your feedback in an open, honest uh, environment." Darrell, I like what you said at the very beginning. This is not a venting session. This is something that we provide constructive feedback to one another. We provide positive feedback to one another, and that we lift each other up. You can still do that in a business, and it is very effective into building teams. And as long as people know that you're there to help make them be successful, to help them be successful, they will do almost anything for you. They will go into high risk situations. They will follow the guidelines you put out. They'll go the extra mile as long as they know you're there for them.
Nice. I've always been a fan of the book, It's Your Ship. I don't know if you're familiar with that book, but an admiral, a very young admiral who took over a battleship that was performing terribly, decided to, implement some pretty simple customer satisfaction procedures and started asking each of the sailors. He didn't start with what can you do to help the ship perform better. He started with what can we here at the ship do to help you be successful in your long-term career. We all know you're not going to be on the ship for more than 3 or 4 years. People don't stay on a ship for a career. So how can we help you get the skills while you're on this ship that will help you be successful in your next career? And that built such a strong camaraderie and such a like you said, a commitment to the ship that he then turned around and said, how can we now perform better than every other battleship? And it was amazing the ideas and suggestions that came out of that. Once people knew that the admiral had their backs, now they wanted to have the admiral's back. And they became the best performing battleship in the Navy. I mean, it's an incredible story. Love the story of It's Your Ship. I'd like to, again, before I give you a chance, Burl, to talk a little bit about maybe some of the things you put in your book about building leadership and culture. Just again, ask the group, if you've got ideas, suggestions, or questions as it relates to this, please raise your hand and I know we've got some people in attendance that have some great things to share, and I'd love for them to join us if they would. But talk a little bit about some of the points you address in your book about building good leadership and culture.
Well, Darrell, the book is Inspired, Not Retired, Leadership Lessons from Father to Son. And so one of the chapters is independence and team building. Independence is a team sport. And you realize very quickly that we all strive to be independent, whether it's independent from our family, independent from our job, whatever it is. But one of the things my dad taught me was sometimes being independent is knowing that you must depend on other people. Sometimes being independent is realizing that you must depend on other people. And I realize as a society, we do value our individualism, and there's nothing wrong with being an individual. We're all individuals. However, we do need other people. We do need other people to move forward and be successful. At the
Yeah.
very beginning, I said, except that you don't know everything about a situation, there's someone in your organization right now that has been following this pandemic and this COVID-19 like nobody's business. Find out who that person is. Have them share things with the organization. Of course, trust but verify. But again, figure out some of the things you can do and realize that we're not doing this alone. Part of
Hmm.
being independent is, again, dependent on other people. Chapter 8, hard work, it won't kill you. I'm sure all of our parents have said that to us at one point in time. And
Yep.
if you haven't heard it, you've probably said it to your kids. Hard work will not kill you. One of the things I put in there was a wartime experience where um, my senior enlisted advisor came in and told us that if we wanted sandbags in fighting positions as officers, we had to do it ourselves. Of course, I was flabbergasted. I was a major at the time. So there's no way that I'm going to be doing this until the colonel came in and said, "Hey, you majors, start filling sandbags." And I was quite upset. And I decided that, you know what, when I pin on Lieutenant Colonel, I'll never fill another sandbag again. In 4 days, I pinned on Lieutenant Colonel, and I never filled another sandbag. I just held the bag open while the majors filled them up. And so my point is, sometimes we have to do things that are necessary, regardless of our rank, regardless of our position, regardless of where we're at.
Nice.
Believe it
Like
or
that.
not, people people respond to that because they
Yeah.
know that you're part of the team. The quarterback doesn't throw a pass from the spectator seats. They're on
Yeah.
the field playing in the game, and
Yeah.
so those are things you need to do to continue to help build your team.
So Chris has raised his hand. And Chris,
Okay.
can you hear us?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
We
Yes.
can. Chris, share your thoughts. We'd love to hear
Hi,
from you.
this is Dr. Pham. I'm out here in California. Thanks, Dr. Randolph, for taking the time today. Really great stories. We uh, we we run a team out here, and we have a lot of employees that are sitting on the sidelines, furloughed, waiting for the mandate to lift. I think we've done a great job connecting with employees, maintaining culture. We've had great culture pre-COVID. What I'm worried about now is coming back. Um, and keeping those spirits up and keeping everyone focused on the game, but also knowing that there are many jobs and hours of work that are at risk for our employees. That's what I worry about most. And how do we temper them, set expectations without having them go to work fearing for loss of income, loss of wages?
Well, Sam, that's a great question, and it is a very, very valid question. I don't know what position you are in, in your organization. One of the things I told one of my coaching clients that owns their own company is that you need to discover and accept your new structure. Kind of looked at me like, well, what does that mean? You have a new structure now. Your organization's not the same. You have a new structure. So who's still working full time? Who have you moved to part time? Have you laid anyone off? Well, no, we haven't laid anyone off. Are you going to lay anyone off? Well, I don't plan to. How do you plan to abate laying people off? And so hasn't given me the answer yet. I mean, I get the answer later on this week, but those are the type of things you need to think through. I mentioned earlier about the banking industry where people are working 4 hours a day. Some banks are probably paying them for 8, but they're definitely working 4 hours a day. 4 hours is better than no hours because no hours means that they have to get in line for unemployment. And just speaking with my son this morning, that creates a tremendous amount of stress. Now he lives here with me, so all his needs are taken care of. But your employees that have families, have children, have bills to pay, it's a little bit different. So as organizational leaders, you sort of need to think through how you're going to bring people back, how you're going to keep them employed, and all the things you're going to do um, to make those things happen. During the government sequestration, we had to track all the things that weren't being done. I got phone calls all the time about I need this, I need that, I need this. I was a colonel at the time. I don't do that kind of work. So I that's not what I do. So I just took a note, recorded it, and figured out, okay, these are the things we must do. These are the things we'd like to do. These are the things that we really don't have to do. Now, when we start bringing people back, who's going to do those things? Do we bring everybody back at the same time? Do we bring people back in shifts? How do we actually bring people back? You have to really think through all the things that you just said, because you have a great culture in your organization. You have great things going on. So guess what? You've now created an expectation. Because you have a great culture in your organization, you've now created an expectation that our leaders and our managers will do the right thing for us when we come back. But I'd say sit down or Zoom or however you're going to do it right now, plan those things out with the leadership of the organization. And when you get to a point where it's pretty solid, you're happy with it, you believe that it would be something that your employees would like to know about and hear, again, communicate that. You'll get feedback on concerns, anxieties, and stressors. But I would definitely say plan the things out that you're most concerned with. I hope
Well,
that
and
answers your
Chris,
question, Sam.
well, and Chris, I'd like to ask you maybe to share what you feel like you've done to create a good culture before the pandemic, and to follow Dr. Randolph's suggestions. What are some communication strategies that you can deploy within your current organization to address the very things you just got through describing as being concerned about or that are tentative?
Sure. So pre-COVID, we were very regular about communication in the organization. The core values and the vision and mission were kind of breathed at every morning huddle. Post-COVID, we are still maintaining communication. We're having team huddles, company huddles, and just kind of company check-ins. All of our managers are doing phone calls, personal check-ins, really to all the furloughed employees. So we have roughly 100 people, and right now we only have 4 people full-time. Going back to my concern is we're in touch with everyone, and everyone's in great spirits, getting eager and more eager to get back. We don't know what demand is going to look like. We're in the dental industry. And my concern is we're going to get back, and these people who are all, they love each other. We're all one big family. They're going to see their fellow comrades who might be off the battlefield. They won't be around anymore, or they won't be around as much. And that could be really demoralizing. And we haven't really touched upon potentially having to make salary and wage cuts, which is another cut that could really hurt. And it's not that we are devaluing anything about them and our perception of that, but my worry is that the culture, while strong, there is an emotional side to this that is potentially very fragile. So we're highly communicative right now, and we're trying to do fun Zoom things. We're talking about having a pajama party to check in, and competitions online, scavenger hunts, and we're doing everything we can to kind of stay connected with our team. And they look forward to work. It's their identity, it's their relationships with others that make their life whole, and we recognize that. So I think we've done a great job of maintaining things like that. But my worry is we get back and the business has to meet demand. And I may want to employ everyone, but if we're oversupplied on the workforce, that's no good for anybody. And I think they do understand that the business has to be there at the end of the day for them to all have jobs and for us to serve our mission and purpose. But how do you keep those spirits up through that process when you've potentially cut, I don't know if you saw the latest statistic, but the dental industry is one of the most affected with the most dampened demand. And I don't know if it's current or anticipated, but it's going to take some time to ramp back up. And as much as I want to bring on everyone right away, it might take 6 months.
Well, and maybe Dr. Randolph, if you could respond to that from your experience in the Army, where there are going to be people who don't come back from the war, and the emotions that are involved in that. And because we're coming to the end, what I'd like to do is give you a chance to kind of address that, as well as say anything you'd like to about your book, and then we'll kind of close things up.
Okay. Well, that was it was a great question. I think one of the things that you can do, and this will probably sound odd, but I have a relationship, if you will, with my dental hygienist. Know her name, get phone calls from her. She reminds me of my appointments. I would imagine the same thing is happening in your office. So as you ramp back up, how come your dental hygienist can't do the same thing? They know who their clients are. They know whose teeth they work on. They know who those people are. It would probably behoove them to get their list of clients, and instead of having the receptionist do it, because we always want the receptionist or the admin person to do it, the dental hygienist calls up and says, "Hey, Chris, just wanted to let you know that we're back open for business. And I know your last appointment was on this date, but it was canceled. And so now we're taking appointments for blah, 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 blah." That's the way you do things, whether it's your dentist, whether it's your physical therapist, whoever it is, because you've already established a relationship with all your clients. They already know you. Some of them have been coming there for years, but you, as the owner, can't necessarily do that. But I guarantee you that dental hygienist can, because they know their clients. That will abate some of the fear, some of the foreboding, some of the reticence in coming back. The other side of that, unfortunately, is not everyone will come back because they don't have the money to come back. And that's just a reality. Some people will not come back because they're unemployed. And so, as long as you reach out to them, figure out their story, let them know that you're back and that, again, you're still in the fight with them. I think that they probably will. You'll probably see a higher return on investment than you would expect. If you try to have your admin person do it, and you've got 8 or 9 hygienists, your admin person or people will never be able to have the impact that your dental hygienist will. They won't be able to call people as quickly. They won't be able to bring people in as fast, and they don't have the relationship that your hygienists do. And so that would be my recommendation. I expect a phone call within the next month or two from my dental hygienist. And if I don't get one, I'll be calling her to figure out what's going on. And I hope that helps.
Great. Do you want to just share with people how they can get a hold of your book and again, the name of it?
So my book, Inspired Not Retired, Leadership Lessons from Father to Son, it can be purchased from Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com, Books A Million, and several other online bookstores, $21 paperback. Or if you're into ebooks, it's $9.95 on sale now. Bestseller sticker was in the category of fatherhood.
Nice.
Fatherhood.
Nice. Thank you. So let's wrap things up. And let me just mention that our guest panelist for this Friday, April 24th, will be Justin Olson, CMHC, a mental health therapist with Blomquist Health Solutions. Justin works with individuals, families, and couples. He helps people experiencing depression, anxiety, trauma, ADHD, and substance abuse. We will be discussing how to thrive, not just survive, during this pandemic. Now, immediately following today, you'll be receiving an email survey asking you for your feedback on today's huddle. Please give us your feedback, complete that so that we can make things even more effective in the future. Also, please send us your ideas and suggestions for themes for future huddles. Today's theme came from feedback we got from attendees, and we appreciate that very much. Again, if you'd like to be a guest to provide your input as a panelist, or if you would know someone that you would like to recommend, we'd love to hear from you. To communicate with us, just simply contact or use the Contact Us form on the website goingonoffense.com. We want to thank today's guest panelist, Dr. Randolph. Thank you so much. Your wisdom and input was incredible, as well as Chris for your contributions. We want to thank the organizations that have gotten behind this effort and are supporting it. Please check out the wonderful offers for help on the help page of the website. Also, there's tremendous ideas and resources and suggestions that are there in an effort to help people cope with the emotional impacts of this pandemic. We will be posting the recording of this huddle on the website later today. To wrap things up, I'm going to simply remind you that we hold these every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And again, thank Dr. Randolph for your contribution. And tell everyone good night, goodbye, and good morning in your area. Thanks again.
Thank you.